Hi, I'm Doug Boles, president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Thank you for listening to Behind the Bricks. We're excited to bring you this exclusive and entertaining content about the world's greatest racetrack. Keep listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, Indianapolis Motor Speedway fans, Doug Boles here with you for another episode of Behind the Bricks. I'm coming to you from inside the racetrack, in front of one of our favorite places, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. You know, I get asked an awful lot of questions, but one I get all the time is just two words. People look at me and say, the basement. Well, now that the museum's going to be closed for renovations, we thought if you missed the basement, let's figure out a way to let you see that fabled basement before it's in its new version in May of 2025. Carl's going to give us a tour of the basement. This is one of the most fabled places at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and you get an opportunity every day to give some tours in here. Kind of a cool moment when you get to see folks' face when those doors open up.
Absolutely. That's my favorite part about the tours, or seeing the reactions of the people as they walk in, just their eyes just light up.
Well, you ready to take me in?
Sure, let's go.
Let's go. So it is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and we're really known for the Indy 500, but a couple of these cars in here are maybe some of the most expensive race cars in the world, and they're part of the museum's collection. Tell me about these two cars, starting with this Mercedes.
Yeah, so this first car is a 1954 Mercedes. It's actually a Formula One car, you know, it's got fenders. It raced 1955-56, dominated. I think it ran 12 races and won 9 of them. The famous Juan Fangio was a driver, and also Sterling Moss was a teammate, so often they were first and second in these cars. These cars are way ahead of its time. I believe there's 8 of these exist in the world. Estimates of being close to $80 million if this would go to auction.
It's such a beautiful car, the lines of that. And speaking of beautiful, I mean, kind of right here behind us, this Ferrari, which was the last Ferrari to win Le Mans outright until this year when they did it in 2023, but 60 years almost that this was the last car to win outright. Another amazing race car.
It's a 1964 250 LM. Jochen Rindt was a driver. He also raced here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so there's a tie there also. This is probably our second valuable car in the collection.
So a lot of history in this building. Some of it connects back to really the very beginning of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So of the early cars, do you have a favorite or one you really like to talk about?
Well, one of them is a Duesenberg. So Duesenbergs have a tie here in Indianapolis, and particularly this car. This car ran in the 1914 Indy 500, finished 10th. Eddie Rickenbacker was the driver. Right. You know the history of Eddie Rickenbacker, if you know the Speedway, how important he was. He came and purchased the Speedway from the original founders, and then sold the Speedway to the Hallmans after World War II.
I love this car, A, because of Eddie Rickenbacker, who ultimately becomes president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway when he buys it. World War I fighter ace. But what I love the best about this car is the fact that it carried the American flag even back in 1914 when he was racing this car. This is a spectacular car. One of the things I love about our sport, especially in its formative years and even up through the 50s, 60s, and the 70s, is how the cars changed so much. You know, right here when you're looking at an Eddie Sachs car and a Dan Gurney car, sort of the same era, right? But completely different styles, and sitting next to a Roadster as well. I mean, this all happened within 10 years of each other almost.
Yeah, so early 60s, 1961, up to about 65, 66, probably more changes than any other time in history of the Speedway. You went from front engine cars to rear engine cars. You got more of a Formula One European influence with the rear engine cars.
So one of the things that to me is interesting about especially this car is the fact that you're sitting in the middle of a bathtub of fuel in this car.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what makes it so wide, right? They're carrying the fuel around them.
Yep. So the old Roadsters, front engines, gas tank was in the back. So you're going to put the engine back there, or you're going to put the fuel.
Right.
It goes around the driver.
The driver didn't think anything about that. They're sitting right in the middle of that.
Yeah, some of these were carrying as much as 70 gallons of fuel. This was, you could say, the car that started the revolution to rear engine cars. This was a 1961 Cooper Climax. It was a Formula One car that they came over actually with the urging of Roger Ward to come over and you should bring one of these cars over and try it in Indianapolis. So they came over with Jack Brabham, who was the defending world champion. Yep. Came over, qualified kind of middle of the field, and went up in the top 10, and that was the beginning of the end of the Roadsters.
A lot of history at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway with female drivers competing here, and it really started with Janet Guthrie. And this car wasn't the car she first raced here, but it is the car she first drove here.
Yes, it is. Didn't make the race. This was 1976. First car that she drove here at the Speedway. I didn't make the race in 76, came back in 77, and 78 made the race and was a top 10 in 1978.
Sitting right next to it is one that's just almost as iconic, really. You just take a look at the GT40 here. We saw early when we came in here the Mercedes and the Ferrari, but this is a pretty special Ford car that actually has some history as well.
Absolutely. This, to me, ranks right up there with the Mercedes and the Ferrari as far as American innovation. This was a GT40. This was 1966. If you saw Ford versus Ferrari, this is the car they're developing during that movie. This race, Le Mans, 1966. That was the first year that the GT40 won. It does have ties because Mark Donohue was the driver, 1972 winner. This car raced at Sebring in 66 with Mark Donohue, and actually was second place at Sebring in the 12 hours of Sebring.
So part of the history of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway actually includes Formula One as well. This is a Mario Andretti Formula One car. Obviously, he never raced Formula One here, but he did win a world championship, and he did win the Indianapolis 500. But this car over here was driven by somebody who was pretty successful at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in a race car. This is a Michael Schumacher car.
Yep, from 1992, his rookie car. Of course, he won, I think 5 of the 7 Grand Prix held here, so he pretty much dominated the years that the Formula One was here at Indianapolis.
Another part of the basement that people got to see is really how we did, not necessarily restoration, but a lot of the finer details, getting the cars prepped before they went up on the floor. So what actually happens in this space?
So this corner we call our detail shop. So anytime a car goes in or goes out, it gets a detail cleaning. This is a 1968 Turbine. This was Joe Leonard's car that almost won the race. Turbine almost won the race in 1967 and 68. They come back in 68 with these called wedge turbines, and that's a helicopter engine without the chopper sound. So it sounds like kind of like a vacuum cleaner going by.
So I want to thank Carl for giving us a tour of the basement, and for those of you who hadn't gotten a chance to see it before it closed, it's pretty amazing. I'm standing here with Larry Basiglia right by one of his vans. Larry was known for being the first in line for the month of May for a long, long time. Several different versions of this van that Larry used. I stand here next to Larry to remind you to be first in line in May of 2025. When you get a chance to come back here to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, this area that's the basement today will be a general admission area. It will be part of the winners collection. There will have been 108 runnings of the Indy 500, lots of winning cars, lots of interactivity, lots of great ways for you, the race fan, and your family to enjoy the new Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. And don't forget, you can go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum site. You can become a member. Donate today. It helps continue to tell the stories that we love so much, those stories about these cars, these people, these drivers, and your memories here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Thanks for joining me on Behind the Bricks. Can't wait to see you on our next episode, and can't wait to see you here in May 2025 for the new version of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. Thank you, fans, for listening to this episode of Behind the Bricks. We look forward to bringing you more exciting content about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway soon.